Do you believe in devils? People who act on their own desires, causing harm to others, might be called devils. Is there really a way to stand against such devils? My name is Scarlett. Looking back, time has flown by so quickly. My daughter Christy, whom I bore and raised, is now over 20 and has decided to get married. Now that I think about it, I was about the same age as Christy is now when I met and married my husband Matthew. A blissful marriage with the love of my life. Back then, I was oblivious to the devil lurking in the shadows of my happiness. This devil was my husband's mother, my mother-in-law. And this devil bore a human name, Marilyn. Scarlett and Christy are here to serve me, to take care of my life. It's all about money, cash, hand it over quickly. When did the devil's cry echo, I wonder? My dad was a lawyer who worked for the socially weak and believed in justice. I have an older brother, George, who admired our dad and aspired to become a lawyer himself, to contribute to the rescue of the underprivileged like him. Influenced by George, I also harbored a desire to do such work. One day, a TV documentary about people fighting for workers' rights and better working conditions caught my eye. These people were labor relations specialists. Learning this, I developed a keen interest in this profession. To become a labor relations specialist, legal studies were essential, so I set my sights on a law school and dedicated myself to studying. George had already made it smoothly into law school and was on track to pass the bar exam. Sometimes I resented not being as smart as George, but I poured my best efforts into my studies. Thanks to my hard work, I was accepted into university, where I learned about law and gradually approached becoming a labor relations specialist. Maybe because I wasn't brilliant as George, the study of law and university exams were quite challenging, but I persevered. Eventually, I graduated, obtained my degree, and got the necessary qualifications. After graduation, I landed a job at a law firm. The CPA exam I passed in high school and the CFP qualification I obtained during college were closely related to the work and laws handled by a labor relations specialist, which seemed to work in my favor during the hiring process. Gaining experience in my job, I realized the societal importance of my work and led a fulfilling life. In the office, there was a senior named Matthew, from whom I learned a great deal. Matthew is earnest, has a strong sense of justice, and above all, he is passionate about his work. At first, our relationship was that of mere respectful colleagues, but as we worked together, I was increasingly drawn to his kindness and reliability. In other words, I began to fall in love with Matthew. And he too started to see me, not just as a junior colleague, but as someone special. Just like water flows from high to low, our relationship naturally progressed into dating and eventually led to a promise of spending a lifetime together. When I shared the news of considering marriage with Matthew, Mom clapped her hands in joy, and Dad, while showing a smile with mixed feelings, blessed us. George, who by then had finished his legal clerkship and become a lawyer, congratulated us too. Smiling besides George was his wife, my sister-in-law. Matthew is an only child, and his father passed away the year before last, leaving him with his mother, Marilyn, at their family home. Before our marriage, a family meeting was arranged. The attendees were, of course, Matthew and I, Marilyn, and both my parents, along with George and his wife. Marilyn, who would become my mother-in-law, is 55 years old, but looks younger for her age. Maybe because of this, her makeup seemed a bit heavy and flashy. But that's a matter of personal taste, and it wasn't excessively flashy or concerning. She was always smiling, repeatedly expressing her happiness about her son's marriage. As greetings ended and conversation flowed, my mom said, "It must be lonely since your husband passed away." "Oh no, not at all. I've actually found freedom in being alone, and I have Matthew with me, so I'm not lonely," Marilyn replied nonchalantly. I thought that would be the end of it, But Marilyn continued. My husband left a decent fortune, so I don't have any financial troubles. I even invest some of it and get returns, even if things get tough. Matthew earns quite well as a labor relations specialist, and Scarlett does too, so I have nothing to worry about. There was something off about the way Marilyn spoke with such ease. My parents exchanged glances, and George slightly tilted his head. Marilyn seemed oblivious to their reactions and kept talking. I hear Scarlett's father and brother are also lawyers, earning quite well. It's an honor to become relatives with such people. Mother, what are you saying? That's rude. Matthew interjected with a cool smile. She responded. Rude? How so? I'm just admiring how great that is. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm happy to become relatives with a wealthy family. I'm just honestly expressing my joy. Why are you happy about that? It's none of your business, Mother. After all, if my dear son and his wife ever face any troubles, they could help us out, right? It's reassuring for a parent. If the son and his wife are well off, they can lend a hand if something happens to me. It's a relief for me, you know. What she's saying seems off. Brown, Vivian, I apologize. My mother might be nervous and saying things that are not quite right. If she's made you feel uncomfortable, please accept my apologies. Matthew interjected, wiping sweat from his brow and trying desperately to smooth over the situation. I tried to help. Marilyn, it's okay. We plan to live a stable and well-planned life, so we won't face any troubles. Right. Sorry for the unnecessary worry. Yes, just work hard and earn well. However, Marilyn's response was odd too, leaving me at a loss for words, and I froze. Marilyn seemed oblivious to the atmosphere, happily sipping her coffee. That evening, back at home, my family expressed their discomfort about Marilyn. Is that mother-in-law okay? Is that just her personality? Or is she saying those things deliberately? If it's deliberate, what's her intent? I don't know. She seems to be a completely different type from us. It's incomprehensible to talk about money and wealth in such a setting. Is that normal for her? The family meeting, including my sister-in-law, was filled with questions. Actually, after that family meeting, Marilyn said something to me. As the meeting ended and everyone started to leave, I happened to be the last one with Marilyn. Hey, Scarlett, you're going to live with me after you get married, right? Let's discuss living expenses and housework. It'll be a help for me. After all, Matthew is a boy and can't do any housework. I had never considered living with Marilyn. She is still healthy and not of an age to be considered elderly. I wanted to start my married life with just Matthew, and I thought that was only natural. I didn't tell my parents or George about this interaction, but I mentioned Marilyn's words to Matthew the next day. I never thought about living with Marilyn right after getting married. You're not considering that, are you, Matthew? Of course not. My wish is to build a life just with you after our marriage. And Scarlett, I'm telling you this because it's you, but I can't wait to leave that house. I understood Matthew's feelings, but when I asked him why he was so eager to leave his family's home, he said, You might have felt it during the family meeting, but my mother has an abnormal obsession with money. It was just as my family had suspected. She often demands money from me, saying she raised me, and even specifies a substantial amount as rent every month. Matthew didn't understand why Marilyn was so fixated on money. It might be something she was born with, he thought. As I'm starting a new family with you, I think it's better to keep some distance from my mother. Actually, I want to. Later, Matthew clearly told Marilyn that we would not be living with her. Thus, we could start our sweet married life together in our own place. However, I would later find out that Matthew hadn't told me everything. As we both worked, we decided to contribute equally to our living expenses and save the rest. That was our plan, but the amount Matthew was supposed to put into our joint bank account was consistently short. When I asked him about it, his answer was shocking. Sorry, I've had to send money to Mom, and there are some essential expenses for myself that I can't cut down, so I can't fully contribute to our joint account. Matthew, who had lived at home until marriage, had been depositing a significant amount of money at Marilyn's behest each month. He thought leaving home would end this, but Marilyn insisted on continuing the payments under the guise of remittances. Unconvinced, I decided to confront Marilyn and visited my in-laws' home. Marilyn, I heard that Matthew is sending you money, but isn't that strange? You're well and have father-in-law's inheritance, so why do you need money from Matthew? But Marilyn acted as if it was the most natural thing. What are you talking about? Matthew lived here and paid money every month. I intended to receive money from both after your marriage, but since you refused to live with me, he still owes his duty as a son. In fact, I'm only asking for 1.5 people's share, not 2, so you should be grateful. I couldn't comprehend how she could think like that. Such arbitrary rules, and what duties are you talking about? A son should give money to his mother. That's common sense. Even a son's wife should contribute to her mother-in-law. Don't you know that? Such common sense does not exist. When I firmly denied it, Marilyn's tone changed completely. Marilyn erupted. You ungrateful fool! I was nice to you, and now you've gotten too comfortable. I won't hold back anymore. You married my son. I will thoroughly teach you what it means to be a wife. Her eyes narrowed, and although not quite split, her mouth twisted into an ugly shape as she hurled insults at me. I was stunned by this unexpected change and felt a surge of fear. I don't remember much after that. I fled the in-laws' house as if escaping. Back home, I told Matthew what happened. But as I spoke, the fear and shock I had felt resurfaced, and tears overflowed. My mother has an abnormal obsession with money, Matthew explained, and she's become aggressive toward anything that doesn't align with her wishes. Her sudden shift from calm to rage is shocking. Matthew said that from now on, he would handle things, and that I should avoid Marilyn as much as possible. Indeed, I didn't want to have anything to do with Marilyn, but I wondered if it was fair to leave Matthew to deal with her alone. I don't know what discussions took place between Matthew and Marilyn afterward, but Marilyn stopped bothering me. Matthew didn't explain in detail, but it was clear to me. The amount Matthew was sending Marilyn each month had increased. Life seemed calm on the surface, but it wasn't entirely peaceful. Marilyn would regularly come over and talk to Matthew. When I tried to intervene, she would angrily berate me. I have nothing to discuss with you. Don't interfere in conversations with my son, you fool. This happened repeatedly, and Marilyn always left looking satisfied. Matthew wouldn't share the details, but it was easy to guess he was giving her money. It was frustrating to see Matthew's weak stance towards Marilyn, but seeing his distressed state made me want to protect him. Yet I was at a loss for what to do, and couldn't discuss it with my parents or George. During this time, I became pregnant with Matthew's child and gave birth to our beloved daughter, Christy. My parents and George and his wife were overjoyed and celebrated the birth. George and his wife, having no children themselves, shared our happiness as if it were their own. Marilyn, too, was thrilled about her first grandchild, but for entirely different reasons. Such a win! We've got a future earner. A boy might earn more, but a girl can marry rich, then you're set. You'll get a hefty celebration gift from Scarlett's family, right? That's like a windfall. Lucky us. Marilyn only saw her grandchild as a means to gain money. Hey, give me the celebration gift money. It's a happy occasion after all. Marilyn, for some reason, started to demand money from us after we had our child. What do you mean? Normally, we should receive a celebration gift from you, Marilyn, right? What are you talking about? Listen, you two became parents because I gave birth to Matthew. It's because of me that this celebration event happened. So, I should be the one to receive a celebration gift. Don't you understand? Or are you just stupid?" She spouted this nonsensical logic with a detestable face and then proceeded to extort money from us. There are too many episodes with Marilyn to narrate them all here. Even as our family suffered under Marilyn's manipulation, our daughter Christy grew up healthy. Having been subjected to Marilyn's influence since she was young, Christy deeply detested her. Our life could have been happy with just the three of us, excluding Marilyn. However, when Christy was 13, tragedy struck our family. Matthew had to undergo a re-examination after a health check, which revealed a significantly advanced malignancy. He passed away after just 3 months of battling the disease. After the solemn funeral, Marilyn's words were jarring. "I expected Matthew to contribute more, but his early passing was unexpected, a real wrench in my plans. But I adapt well. Now, Scarlett, as Matthew's wife, you must serve me. And Christy, grow up fast and marry rich. I'm looking forward to it." Matthew had been a barrier protecting us from Marilyn, but now that he was gone, I felt the full brunt of the onslaught. Marilyn was targeting not just me, but Christy as well. About 3 months after Matthew's funeral, Marilyn suddenly showed up. "I'm getting bored. I've come to collect a substantial amount today. You can afford it. Matthew's inheritance must have come in. Hand it over quickly." Matthew's inheritance is meant for Christy's future. Why should I give it to you? Matthew's inheritance rightly belongs to his mother, me. It's absurd that it goes to the wife and child instead, according to some ridiculous law. So I'll take it directly from you. I have that right. You, as his wife, must take care of me, and Christy has to look after her grandmother. That's common sense in society. You've squeezed enough money from Matthew already. Despite having father-in-law's inheritance, you've received more than enough from us. I countered Marilyn's absurd logic with reason. Then Marilyn, in her typical fashion, started ranting and stormed into Christy's room. "Christy, your mother doesn't understand. You give me what's owed instead." Marilyn screamed and grabbed Christy's piggy bank, smashing it on the floor. The piggy bank shattered, scattering coins everywhere. Marilyn picked up the money with a terrifying expression. Christy stood frozen, trembling at the unbelievable scene. I was too stunned to intervene or even speak. After stuffing the collected money into her pocket, Marilyn threatened, "I'll let you off with this for today, but if you don't transfer the usual amount to the bank account within 3 days, who knows what might happen? Christy needs to grow up and lay bigger eggs, but if necessary, we can start now. Well, never mind, just remember, you and Christy exist to serve me, to take care of my needs, my lifestyle. It's all about money, cash. Hand it over quickly." She left as quickly as she had arrived, like a storm passing through. It reminded me of a phrase from a popular TV show theme song from the past. I decided to focus solely on protecting Christy. I dodged Marilyn's unreasonable demands while waiting for the right moment, accepting them when necessary. And so, about 7 years passed. "Why didn't you invite me to my granddaughter's wedding?" Marilyn suddenly called one day, furious. "You're failing as a son's wife." "Who is this? I don't have any children." "What? I don't understand what you're saying. I'm coming over now, so you better change your attitude and wait." True to her word, Marilyn came and started berating me. "Why wouldn't you invite me to the wedding of my cash cow? I heard the groom is quite wealthy. You should greet me properly now, or it'll be troublesome later." As I said earlier, I don't have a daughter, and who are you? You should be a stranger to me. Marilyn looked confused, unable to comprehend my words. My aim was to protect Christy, to ensure she grew up and achieved happiness, skillfully evading Marilyn until then. Now Christy has married and found happiness. First, to protect her, I asked George to help with what you might call an evacuation. I had sent Christy to a safe zone out of Marilyn's reach. George and his wife readily cooperated, and Christy's evacuation lasted nearly a year. George and his wife, having no children of their own, cherished Christy as if she were their own daughter. When Christy turned 15, they made a proposal to formally adopt Christy. If Christy remained my daughter, Marilyn, as her grandmother, would continue to haunt her. By severing my legal ties with Christy, Marilyn's connection would also be cut off. Although the legal relationship between Marilyn and us had ended with Matthew's death, adopting Christy as George's daughter would further sever ties with Marilyn. I accepted George's proposal. I couldn't let Christy continue to be preyed upon by Marilyn. Even as George's daughter, Christy would always be my beloved child, and George's family had genuinely adored her. They would surely bring her happiness. I bided my time, skillfully handling Marilyn's demands. Christy's marriage marked a turning point. As planned, we didn't invite Marilyn to the wedding. We treated her as non-existent, cleanly cutting off all ties. Marilyn might rage upon finding out, but that didn't matter. She seemed to understand that my connection with Christy had been severed. "How dare you do such a ridiculous thing?" Marilyn shouted in anger, but another voice echoed back. "You've caused enough suffering for Scarlett and Christy. You'll pay for it." I had called George before Marilyn arrived. There is a duty to care for parents and their financial needs in the family, but only if they are truly in need. Marilyn, our mother-in-law, was not in financial distress. She had been extorting money for her own pleasures. We had recorded nearly all of Marilyn's abusive language and unreasonable demands. We would use this as evidence for a damage claim. Let me reiterate, George is a lawyer. So is Dad. Marilyn had no chance of winning. "I don't have any money because I failed in investments. That's why I was relying on you and Christy." Not only had Marilyn failed in investments, but she had also been gambling and was in debt. Initial success in both investments and gambling led to her downfall, and she kept losing thereafter. Beginner's luck can be terrifying indeed. With debts and an impending lawsuit, Marilyn's prospects for a decent life were grim. There stood a pitiable, weeping old woman. I felt liberated from the devil, light and free. As a labor relations specialist, I want to return to my dream of helping workers, just as I had envisioned. It had been a long, difficult journey, but it was also a time when I gained the treasure that is Christy. Now that my daughter has grown up, I want to use my time effectively for myself.
My name is Cindy. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I met my husband Joe through a colleague at work, a kind of blind date, and we got married. Joe and I are of the same age and shared the same hobbies, and I thought life with him would be enjoyable. My in-laws were cheerful and kind people, and my mother-in-law said, "We were worried because Joe hadn't brought home a single potential bride until now. Please, take good care of Joe." Her words stabbed at my heart a bit, since I'm of the same age as him, but I pretended not to notice. A year has passed since our marriage. There were times when we argued and Joe would immediately mention divorce, but I thought that's part of married life, and that happened. I think we got along relatively well. On weekends, we drove and took day trips, a hobby of ours. Before we were married, I traveled alone a lot, but after marriage, we basically acted as a pair. Joe lived with his parents until we got married, and he seemed to use their car when he went out. So after we got married, we have been using my car since. That car is nearing its limits. I was driving a compact car because I liked the design and rarely had passengers, but I am considering buying a new one before the next car inspection. When I consulted with Joe about this, he agreed, saying, "It's your car, so do as you like. But if you're going to replace it anyway, why not get a larger car instead of a compact?" he suggested, and I agreed. The next weekend, we went to look at cars together. As we started looking at cars, Joe got more excited. The car, he said, was good, was quite expensive. Certainly, its performance was good. It was spacious inside, and there was nothing to complain about. But I hesitated because I hadn't considered spending that much. How about I take out a loan in my name? The frequency of driving is about the same for both of us, and we're paying from our household budget, so it doesn't matter who does it, Joe suggested, and we decided to consider it in that direction. We went to look at other cars, but we liked the first one best, and decided on it. However, the loan was not approved in Joe's name. It seemed to have been flagged because he had just changed jobs. Then, Joe started swearing at the clerk. "I'm saying I'll buy it. Can't you do something about it?" This is one of the things I dislike about Joe. No matter which store we go to, his attitude towards the staff is somewhat condescending. When I tried to stop Joe, he got sulky and went outside to smoke. My husband has a domineering side. Whenever something doesn't sit well with him, he quickly threatens divorce, which is really tiresome. I profusely apologized to the salesperson. Perhaps it would be easier to get a loan if the amount was lower, or if it's cheap. I could pay in full. As I was consulting with the salesperson, my husband came back. "Hey, why not buy it under Cindy's name? I'll be the one paying anyway," he said, leaving me to ponder. Actually, I found this idea appealing, and other cars just didn't resonate with me. I nodded and signed the document. They said it would take a few months for the car to be delivered, so while I looked forward to its arrival, I drove around in my old car, cherishing our last moments together. My husband, sitting in the passenger seat, fiddled with his smartphone, saying, "Finally, bidding farewell to this cramped space, huh?" During the drive, I let my husband take over the wheel. As I casually glanced at the smartphone left on the dashboard, a message caught my eye. "Did you get a new car? And it's a luxury car at that." It was from one of my husband's colleagues. My husband seemed to have been showing off our new car. My husband has a vanity issue, so he probably hasn't mentioned that the car is bought under my name. I thought it didn't matter. But this car ended up changing our fate. 3 months later, the first place we went to in the newly delivered car was my in-laws' house. We visited to celebrate my father-in-law's retirement. My husband always says we need to honor his parents, so it seemed like a good opportunity. When my father-in-law greeted us, he excitedly looked at the car and said, "So, this is the new car. Nice! So cool!" I suggested, "Let's go out together in this next time," to which he responded with delight. My mother-in-law, too, said, "I want to go too. How about a spa trip?" She seemed excited, so I decided to make plans, taking into account their wishes. At my in-laws, we had a great time talking about my father-in-law's work and my husband's childhood. One memorable comment was, "I really wanted a daughter. I thought it would be fun to go out and share clothes with her. But it was you, Joe, who I gave birth to." She then added, "So Cindy, if you don't mind, let's go out together next time." I was thrilled. However, my husband didn't seem to find this amusing. Although my mother-in-law was only joking and she didn't say a word about not needing him, he was sulking. Before we got married, I found his pouting cute, but it becomes a bit annoying when it happens so frequently. Perhaps because his parents were present, he didn't say anything, but my husband often uses the threat of divorce to get me to comply when things don't go his way. We somehow managed to get through the situation and went back home. The next day, my husband came into the living room after work and declared, "The luxury car you bought will be a gift to my dad. If you oppose, we'll get a divorce." Huh? At first, I thought it was a joke and tried to laugh it off, but it seems my husband was dead serious. Hold on. Why are you talking about this all of a sudden? Dad was looking at that car with such envy. That's why the best gift for his retirement would be to present him that car and let him drive it. That's the ultimate way to honor my parents. What? I was taken aback. But for some reason, Joe was adamant and wouldn't back down. He's always been stubborn, and there are times when he flies off the handle if I don't comply with him. Feeling bothered, I tried to reason with him, saying, "We agreed to go out with your father together, didn't we? Giving a car as a gift is..." But he wasn't having any of it. The argument continued, and Joe finally started to lose his temper. As their only son, I want to give back to mom and dad. I want them to feel grateful for having a son, not a daughter. It seemed that Joe was still bothered by his mother's remark from yesterday about wishing she'd had a daughter. Perhaps he was feeling competitive because his mother had said she wanted to go out with me. I was flabbergasted, but there's no way we could afford to gift a car of that value. Why don't we gift them a trip to a hot spring resort? You agreed to this yesterday, didn't you? Still unsatisfied, Joe glared at me. I married you, a woman past her prime, didn't I? You, with nothing to brag about. Do you know who's responsible for the life we're leading? Just once, listen to what I have to say. Hearing his harsh words, my feelings for Joe rapidly cooled. Past her prime, huh? I was aware of it, but it's infuriating when someone else points it out. On the contrary, I'm doing the housework, so I'm probably better off than Joe, who can't do anything. I'm also working, and our livelihood doesn't rely solely on Joe's salary. With these thoughts, the parts about Joe I dislike started popping into my mind. His attitude towards waitstaff, his quickness to sulk, his unreasonable stubbornness. I had been trying to ignore it, but now it was starting to frustrate me. As these thoughts swirled in my mind, Joe left the room and came back. Then he handed me something. Huh? What caught my eye was a divorce paper. When I looked up in surprise, he said, "Just sign the car ownership transfer document. If you don't like it, you can fill out the divorce papers and leave, okay? What's it going to be?" And what's more, the divorce papers were already filled out. "I've had it," I muttered. "All right." When I did, Joe nodded in satisfaction, tossed the divorce papers aside, and retreated to his room. The next day, Joe brought the necessary documents for the car's title transfer, saying, "We need these. Can we do a title transfer even though we've just taken out a loan?" I pondered this question as I took the documents. I decided to confirm this with the dealership where we bought the car. It turns out changing the title while a loan is still in effect is quite a hassle. On top of that, because the user is changing, my father-in-law's approval is required, meaning it couldn't be a surprise gift as Joe wanted. Moreover, my father-in-law never hinted at wanting a car. If I explained this, I thought, Joe would give up. I also discussed the option of selling the car. I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue driving it now that it felt tainted. It was a popular model, and production hadn't caught up with demand, meaning it could take a while to get a new one. Therefore, I could potentially sell it at a high price. If so, I could use the money to pay off the loan and choose a new car that I like. When I got home from work and told Joe that changing the title is complicated because of the loan, he said, "Then we have no choice but to buy another car. Dad will definitely be delighted." Excuse me? Dad never said he wanted a car. Guess we're really getting divorced then, Joe mumbled, and returned to his room. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was willing to give it a shot if he apologized, but I couldn't continue this marriage. I decided to pack my stuff. I also decided to sell the car. The dealership offering the highest price agreed to pick it up at a later date. I felt relieved. I planned to move out while Joe was at work the following week. This would put an end to everything. With these thoughts, I finished my Friday shift and returned home to find that the car was missing from the parking lot. What? I rushed inside to check if the car keys were still hanging in the usual spot. "It's not here!" I turned pale and dialed Joe's number. However, no matter how many times I called, he didn't pick up. Even after I sent a message asking him to get in touch, he didn't even read it. Did Joe take the car somewhere? But that car is already... 3 hours later, I finally got a message from him. He said he was going on a trip with a colleague, and that we both needed to cool down. "What?" I exclaimed, involuntarily raising my voice at my phone screen. It was frustrating, but if he was going on a trip, he certainly wouldn't be coming back tonight. I decided to quickly put the plans I had made over the past few days into motion. I called a real estate agent I knew from work and signed a lease on the apartment I had asked him to reserve. I also contacted a moving company. The next morning, the movers came and moved out all my belongings, furniture, and appliances. My new place was close by, and by mid-afternoon, my new life had begun. Perhaps it was the weight off my shoulders, but I found myself dozing off. Then I was awakened by the ringtone of my phone. It was a call from Joe. He must have come home, found me gone, and was surprised enough to call, I thought, smirking a bit as I answered the phone. Cindy, can you help me? As I expected, Joe's voice was frantic, but he didn't seem to be at home. He went on. I've had an accident and my insurance isn't covering it. I didn't understand what he was talking about and responded, what? At that, Joe began to get angry. That's why! The new car's insurance! I called the insurance company because I had an accident, but they say it's not covered. As I listened to him, I finally understood. What do you mean you had an accident? Where? Are you injured? I asked, trying to show some concern. It wasn't my fault. The other party was inattentive. But more importantly, what about the insurance? I let out a sigh. I thought I made myself clear, didn't I? I told you not to touch the car for a while. And Joe, you said you understood, right? So why did you take out the car without asking? And remember, we made a promise to inform each other when using the car separately. None of that matters now. For now, Cindy, call the insurance company from my side. Hearing the word accident certainly made me nervous. But if he has the energy to shout like this, it probably wasn't serious. I calmly stated the facts. That car, it's currently reported as stolen. When I got home, the car was gone, so I reported it to the police. In fact, that car was scheduled to be picked up for purchase today. And now you're telling me there's been an accident? What am I supposed to do? I had the insurance canceled because the sale was confirmed. I canceled it when I told you not to touch the car. Hearing this, my husband, or rather, my soon-to-be ex-husband, started to panic. Whoa! Hold on a minute! Even if I was driving our car, it shouldn't be considered stolen. Then Cindy, can you first withdraw the theft report? I understand about the insurance. We can talk about the money when I get back home. But I couldn't just accept what he said. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to tell you. You and I are strangers now. I submitted our divorce papers 3 days ago, and they were accepted. Also, I'm not living in that house anymore. What? He shouted over the phone, but I hung up anyway. Even after hanging up, his calls kept coming in, and it was so bothersome that I turned off my phone. The next day, I took a day off from work to sort out my room. When I turned my phone back on in the morning, it was filled with missed calls from my ex-husband. There was another call around 1 a.m., probably when he got home. But he's the one who flippantly filled out the divorce papers, and he's the one who threatened me with divorce. If he thought that by mentioning divorce, I would do whatever he says, he was sadly mistaken. Sure, when we first got married, I would comply when threatened with divorce. I thought it would be too embarrassing to get divorced so soon, after finally getting married at 35. That's probably why he thought I would comply this time too. But once all those frustrations piled up, I got over my hesitation. While I was cleaning up my room and thinking about these things, my phone rang again. I assumed it was my ex-husband, again. But when I checked, it was from my mother-in-law. I got a call from Joe yesterday. He was talking about an accident and something about Cindy leaving, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. What's going on? She asked. So I explained everything to my mother-in-law. I apologize to you and father-in-law, but the divorce is final. As for the money for the car and the division of property, I'm thinking of arranging a meeting to discuss it in the near future. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law apologized to me profusely and said, if it's okay with you, could I attend that meeting? I'm afraid Joe might say something ridiculous. I agreed to have the post-divorce meeting at my in-laws' house. When I visited my in-laws for the first time in a while, my father-in-law was scolding my ex-husband. My mother-in-law, noticing my arrival, invited me into the living room. As expected, my ex-husband was sulking, but a bump on the head from his father forced him to reluctantly bow his head. But he said, because you only do what you want, my life is a mess. So I told him that I had consulted a lawyer about him constantly threatening me with divorce, which could be considered emotional abuse. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's face turned pale. As a result of our discussions, we agreed that my ex-husband would pay for the original cost of the new car and the settlement for withdrawing the theft report. The difference would be covered by my father-in-law. On my way out, my mother-in-law said, "It's a shame that we couldn't hang out with you, Cindy." So I responded, "If it's okay with you, let's do it again," and left the place. It turned out that the ones who were with my husband during the accident were indeed the colleagues he had bragged about the car to that day. These colleagues were present at the scene, and thus learned about everything. The car was in my name, he was divorced, and that the car had been reported stolen. And so, rumors spread at his workplace, and he was being laughed at behind his back. Right around this time, there was a talk of a transfer, and he eagerly jumped on it, as he felt uncomfortable in his current position. But it was more of a demotion than a transfer, and he was sent to a rural area. He thought he would rely on convenience store food and laundromats since he couldn't do household chores. But when he arrived, there was nothing around him. It was a 30-minute drive to the nearest supermarket, and there was no laundromat to be found. Catherine, who invited me for a meal recently, said she was too scared to ask him how he's managing with his household chores. Catherine was genuinely surprised and delighted that I agreed to meet her, and now we get along as older friends. I'm satisfied now, having bought a new car within my budget and being able to enjoy solo trips, just like I used to.
Hey, what's going on? Where are you right now? Well, I just left the house, like you said. Is there a problem? My name is Emily. I'm a 35-year-old housewife living with my in-laws. My husband Max is on an overseas assignment, so it's just me at home with them. My father-in-law had a stroke last year, leaving him with a bit of paralysis on his left side. Despite that, he's actively working on his rehab and moving his body. As a result, it took some time, but he's recovered enough to handle most of his daily activities. Originally, my father-in-law made a name for himself as an investor. Before marrying Max, I used to work at a brokerage firm, so I really admire him. Living together has given us the chance to often discuss investments and assess management, and I think we've built a very good relationship. My mother-in-law, Helen, is a person who laughs softly and never engages in what people typically call bullying. She seems delighted watching father-in-law and me discuss financial matters. Emily, it's so good for your dad to have someone to talk to. He won't be bedridden, and it looks like we won't have to worry about dementia for a while. The way mother-in-law tenderly supports father-in-law is something I aspire to. I want Max and me to be a couple like them. I really feel that way. However, lately, I've noticed that mother-in-law seems to be struggling more as she sits on the sofa. We had her tested at the hospital and found that she's getting physically weaker. Her blood pressure is also a bit high, and the doctor advised her to take it easy. Mother-in-law, you've been holding down the fort here for so long. Please, take some time for yourself. I said that as I comforted her and took over the housework. But that's not fair to you, Emily. You have to take care of Dad, too. Father-in-law can manage his showers and using the bathroom on his own. All he needs is someone to accompany him on walks and doctor visits. Emily. At this point, I came up with a proposal to reassure my mother-in-law. How about I ask Mom to join Dad on his daily walks? It'll be like a daily walking date for the two of them. I can't believe you, Emily. Well, I guess we'll take you up on your offer until I'm feeling better. Leave it to me. And so, life with my parents-in-law continued peacefully. My only concern was my sister-in-law, Sophia. Sophia constantly throws passive-aggressive comments my way. So, Emily, still no kids? Max is overseas, and these things happen when they happen. Can't even give birth to an heir. What a waste. We'll try to meet your expectations once Max is back in the country. Don't get too comfortable. I also have inheritance rights to this family's assets. It's just like that. I could directly confront her, but it's exhausting, and I don't want to upset my parents-in-law. Ignoring her gracefully is where I show my skills. Maybe Sophia thinks I married into the family to inherit my wealthy father-in-law's assets. It's common to have a mother-in-law, father-in-law feud, but in my case, it's with my sister-in-law. One day, I was having tea with my in-laws on our sunny porch. Emily, I have something to discuss with you. For the first time, mother-in-law looked serious. Yes, mother-in-law, what is it? Actually, Sophia is going to give birth soon, and she wants to temporarily stay at her parents' house to get support from our family. Oh, is it that time already? That's wonderful news. I sipped my tea as I responded. Given that your father is unwell and have also been under the weather, making you handle the household chores, we're thinking of declining her request. I agree. It wouldn't be fair to impose more on you, Emily. My father-in-law looked genuinely concerned as he spoke. Oh, don't worry about that. I'm sure Sophia will be more comfortable at her parents' house. Besides, you two will be close by to watch over your grandchild. I'm happy to help out. Let's have Sophia come over. Upon hearing my nonchalant answer, my mother-in-law's face clouded even more. Thank you, Emily. To be honest, we'd love to have Sophia here so we can see our grandchild up close. But the way she's been treating you is truly regrettable. Your mother's not feeling her best these days either. In the end, it seems like the burden will fall on you, Emily, and that's concerning. My father-in-law also seemed to worry about me. Sophia has made snide comments to me several times, but for the sake of my in-laws, I choose not to retaliate. This has apparently led to Sophia getting more audacious, in turn causing unnecessary worry for my in-laws. Did I mess up here? Once the baby arrives, Sophia might mellow down. I'd love to see you two enjoy your grandchild. What I truly wanted to say was that I wouldn't be beaten by the likes of Sophia, but I just grinned and bore it. If you say so, then maybe it's okay to invite Sophia. I promise to take care of her as much as I can. My mother-in-law finally showed a smile. My father-in-law also seemed relieved. At first, maybe it was because the baby would be born to their biological daughter. They wanted to be close to the experience. Emily, we're truly sorry, and thank you. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law bowed their heads. Hey, no need to bow. Let's lift our spirits. Prepare a room for sister-in-law and go shopping. I can't wait. Can I come along to choose some clothes and toys for the grandchild? All three of us laughed, wrapping up the discussion. My stay at my in-laws while sister-in-law gave birth was likely going to be just a month or two. I thought I'd just have to avoid any sister-in-law drama during that short time. That's what I thought. Until that phone call from sister-in-law. My mother-in-law quickly conveyed her consent to sister-in-law, agreeing that she could stay with the family temporarily while she gave birth. After dinner, my phone rang. It was sister-in-law. Hello, sister-in-law. How can I help you? Hey, Emily. I'm going to be staying at our parents' house for my upcoming childbirth. Yes, mother-in-law told me earlier today. Sister-in-law was speaking loudly. Maybe she was in a good mood. My in-laws paused, realizing the call was from sister-in-law, just by the voice leaking from my phone. It was loud enough for them to hear, even without a speaker. So, can you get out? What? I couldn't help but raise my voice in shock. My in-laws were equally surprised and jumped a little. I don't even want to look at you. Just seeing you irritates me. Make sure you're out of the house by the time I get back. Sister-in-law, what are you talking about? Tell Mom and Dad you're going on an extended trip or visiting Max. I don't care. Just get out. I want to spend time with my family. Wait, hold on. Normally, I could easily dodge sister-in-law's barbs, but this time I was too shocked to find the right words. Once I'm back, you better come back too. You need to take care of Dad, who needs long-term care, and my weak mom. Sister-in-law! I won't take care of them. That's your job as the daughter-in-law. Be grateful I'm giving you a reason to stay in the house. That's awful. How can you say that about your own parents? Enraged by sister-in-law's cruel words, I couldn't help but shout at her. Ooh, scary. I'll just tell Dad and Mom that you yelled at their pregnant daughter. I clenched my mobile phone and tears started to fall. Using my parents only for the birth and then ignoring them? They're such wonderful, kind people. I couldn't hold back my tears of anger and frustration. Glancing at mother-in-law, I noticed her face was red with rage, tears gathering in her eyes. In that moment, my own sister-in-law told me she wouldn't take care of her family. The frustration was overwhelming. Just then, father-in-law tugged on my sleeve. When I turned around, father-in-law had a note in hand. It's okay. We have a plan. Just agree to what Sophia is saying for now and hang up the phone. I read the note, and father-in-law patted my arm with a reassuring smile. As if to calm my nerves, his touch was light. Seeing father-in-law smile, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Though my insides were boiling with anger, I was able to regain my composure. Understood. When are you planning to come back? Maybe next Friday. Then I'll make arrangements to leave the house by that time. You should have just listened from the start. Dealing with a stubborn sister-in-law is so tiresome. I have to clean up after dinner, so if you'll excuse me. As soon as I hung up the phone, mother-in-law broke down in tears and hugged me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. To have a daughter who'd say such horrible things, I'm so sorry. Mother-in-law's tears were flowing freely. I'm fine, mother-in-law. You must be the one feeling terrible after hearing all of that. I wasn't concerned about what sister-in-law had to say. I could silence her with logical arguments if need be. It's not a big deal. But it's hard to see my mother-in-law cry like this. I'm really very sorry. You've been very patient, my father-in-law sighed. Don't worry about me. What's your plan, though? I asked him, trying to comfort my mother-in-law. Well, turns out there's another person struggling with Sophia. We're planning to discipline her together. Another person having issues with Sophia? I was puzzled. Who else could be dealing with her? We've only got 10 days until Sophia comes home to have her baby and seek the family support. No time for tears. We need to start planning how to handle her. Yes, this is where you, Emily, will prove your worth. My mother-in-law wiped her tears and stood up. My worth? I had no idea what she meant. Shortly after, Evan, Sophia's husband, came to visit. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for Sophia's terrible behavior. Evan bowed to my parents-in-law and me as he entered. Emily, meet the other person who's been grappling with Sophia, my father-in-law said with a smile. Before joining this family, I worked in a brokerage firm, as did Evan. We knew each other professionally. I don't mind what she says about me, but I can't forgive her how she talks to you two. I vented my frustration about Sophia to my brother-in-law. He scratched his head and sighed. Look, there's no excuse for her. Even when I tried to correct her, she loses her temper. Her already spoiled nature has gotten worse with her pregnancy. My own daughter told Emily to leave while she stays here to give birth. Can you believe it? My mother-in-law was angrier than I had ever seen her. I get why you and my father-in-law get along. You're in the same line of work. It seemed fun. Sophia probably just couldn't stand it. Wait, so she's jealous because I get along with you and my mother-in-law? I was dumbfounded. She hurt her parents this much out of petty jealousy? And there's one more unbelievable thing. My brother-in-law began to talk about Sophia's actions. Are you kidding me? This makes no sense. I couldn't believe my ears. My hands were shaking from anger. I'm at a loss, too. I've even consulted with my father-in-law about what to do. My mother-in-law looked like she was throwing in the towel. At this point, I was fuming. She plans to rely on her parents' home like nothing happened. She should have been confronted head-on. In hindsight, I regretted my naivety. Father-in-law sighed, looking disappointed. Add this latest mess to the mix, and I'm done giving her any slack. She's my daughter, but enough is enough. Your conversations with father-in-law have finally paid off. My conversations with father-in-law? Wait a minute, you mean... Something clicked in my mind, recalling a discussion I'd had with father-in-law in the past. We might as well go all in. Get ready, Evan. Yes, father-in-law. Mother-in-law finally cracked a smile. All right, Emily. We've got a busy week to prepare everything. We're going to be busy. Absolutely, mother-in-law. Let's do this. I rolled up my sleeves and followed mother-in-law. The next Friday, as planned, sister-in-law returned home temporarily to seek family support for her childbirth. I wonder if that annoying woman finally left. Now I can just laze around here for a while. Maybe I should just move back home for good. Sister-in-law hummed as she walked onto the property. Then, right in front of the house, she dropped her bags and froze. What is this? What stood before her was, indeed, her parents' home. Well, it used to be their home. Now the gate was locked, the name plaque removed, and a for sale sign was prominently displayed. The windows were bare, and the house obviously looked abandoned. What's going on? Why is nobody here? Sister-in-law frantically called both father-in-law and mother-in-law, but neither answered. They'd had enough and blocked her number. Even social media was blocked. Why aren't Mom and Dad answering? Maybe she will... Sister-in-law seemed to get the idea to call me. Hello, sister-in-law, what's going on? I answered her desperate call, cool as a cucumber. Sister-in-law, anything but composed, started shouting right away. What's the meaning of this? My parents' house is for sale!" She was loud enough that father-in-law and mother-in-law could probably hear without even needing speakerphone. I moved the phone away from my ear and replied, "That house and the property have been sold. There's no place for you to temporarily stay while seeking family support for childbirth." "Sold? What do you mean?" "We were told to leave by you, so we did." "Don't joke with me. How can my parents' house be sold just because you left?" "Well, the house is in my name. Why keep it just for you?" "What are you talking about? You sold the house without telling my dad? You thief! I'll sue you!" Seemingly forgetting she's pregnant, sister-in-law was yelling in a fit of rage. I let out an exaggerated sigh. "Did you not hear what I said, sister-in-law? The house is in my name." "So why is my parents' house in your name? That's insane!" "Because I bought it when father-in-law got discharged after his stroke." "You bought it?" "Yes. Father-in-law had become somewhat downhearted after recovering from a stroke. He'd lost confidence, having stepped away from his investments during the recuperation. That's when we started talking about restructuring assets. My husband can't act quickly. He's usually abroad for work, and if we left it up to selfish sister-in-law, she'd probably only take the assets that suited her." "Father-in-law, how about we liquidate all assets into cash? That would make management easier." I suggested we convert all the assets to cash, making it easier for father-in-law to manage. That's when I purchased the family home, using savings from my single days and from my husband. By putting it in my name, I took on all the tedious procedures like property taxes. We let my parents-in-law continue to live there, so they could spend the rest of their lives in the home they loved. That was until sister-in-law messed it all up. "What are you doing? Where are you?" "We left the house, just like you asked. Anything else?" "Don't mess with me! Where are Mom and Dad? They'd never allow this." Sister-in-law still seems to think her parents are on her side. It's almost laughable how naive her thinking is. Father-in-law and mother-in-law are with me. We sold the house, but we've arranged another one. Then I'm coming there too. That's not possible. You're blocked by father-in-law and mother-in-law, remember? They don't want to see you. I say it coldly. Sister-in-law seems taken aback, especially when I mention being blocked. You may not have noticed, sister-in-law, but father-in-law and mother-in-law heard that phone call when you told me to leave. Sister-in-law's face visibly pales. Her earlier bravado instantly deflates. She clearly had no idea they'd heard that call. "Listen, can you tell Mom and Dad it's a misunderstanding? I'm about to have a baby. I need help. It's going to be tough postpartum." Sister-in-law changes her tune, suddenly playing the victim. That's when I play my final card. Why not ask the guy you've been cheating with for help? How do you know about that? The unbelievable thing brother-in-law told me about was sister-in-law's affair. We knew because the timing of sister-in-law's pregnancy coincided with brother-in-law's long business trip. Brother-in-law already had screenshots and other evidence of the affair. Sister-in-law had planned for brother-in-law to raise the child she was expecting with her affair partner. I gotta tell you, brother-in-law is pretty angry too. Wouldn't be surprised if you get dumped, I say in a half-joking tone. Then the phone abruptly hangs up. She's probably scrambling to call brother-in-law right now. Brother-in-law has already expressed his intentions to divorce and seek alimony. My in-laws are cutting off communication with sister-in-law and moving to exclude her from any inheritance. We're leaving our estate in the hands of Max and Emily, they decided. Emily's involvement has made it so much easier. The estate is just money now. It really simplifies the management and paperwork, they add. Father-in-law had recorded the call that angered them from halfway through. With the evidence held by my in-laws and brother-in-law, sister-in-law lost both her family and her share of the inheritance. A month has passed since. Sister-in-law and her husband Evan are now divorced. She faced indisputable evidence of her affair and was hit with a hefty settlement in divorce court. Apparently, she left the home she shared with brother-in-law, pregnant belly and all. Word is she gave birth alone and quietly, and now lives in an old public housing unit, raising the child by herself. Struggling to care for the baby on her own, she receives help from no one. Why is nobody calling me? I'm tired. I'm lonely. I'm broke, she laments. Rumor has it, even her affair partner abandoned her just before the baby was born. She hasn't been able to establish paternity or receive child support. Sister-in-law ended up living on temporary assistance for needy families while paying off the alimony debt. She has to find a job and support herself before she can start repaying her debt. When will sister-in-law ever be debt-free? If she'd truly loved and valued the in-laws, even with a child from her affair, she wouldn't have ended up alone. The child is innocent and is the first grandchild for the in-laws. If sister-in-law can genuinely apologize for her mistakes, both we and the in-laws are open to helping her. Today, I'm having tea with the in-laws in our new home. Emily, what's your take on the Willowbrook Mart? Well, I still think they will rise. What's your opinion, father-in-law? I'm inclined to think they'll go up, but I can't be sure. Father-in-law was looking puzzled when mother-in-law peeked at the papers. Oh, talking about Willowbrook Mart. They're really popular right now for their new desserts, she said, laughing, and we both chuckled. Your mother-in-law seems to know more about the stores than we do. Having mother-in-law check out the stores of companies we're interested in investing in is a good research strategy. It's not about the money. I genuinely love these wonderful in-laws. Ever since becoming estranged from sister-in-law, I've been free from her influence. With my expertise in asset management, I've been able to alleviate the in-laws' concerns for their retirement. As I await my husband's return, my days are filled with peaceful smiles.
I always thought that being targeted for your life was something that only happened in dramas or comics. Never did I imagine that I'd actually find myself in such a situation. The events of that day are still etched in my mind, accompanied by a deep sense of fear. Today, I want to share the most sinister form of harassment I've experienced from my mother-in-law, or Mill for short. My name is Catherine. I'm 30 years old. I'm a homemaker taking care of my family. I live with my husband Tyler, who's a sales rep, and our 10-year-old son Lauren. I met Tyler 3 years ago through a mutual acquaintance at a company where I was working at the time. He's a good guy, previously married. Want to meet him? I was hesitant at first, being introduced to a divorced man with a child while I was single. But when I met Tyler and Lauren, they were both so genuine and adorable that I was completely smitten. Tyler and I hit it off immediately and got married within 6 months. Lauren quickly warmed up to me, and the three of us became a close-knit family. Weekend drives, family camping trips. For 3 years, every day was fulfilling. Finally, the moment we'd been waiting for arrived. Big news, you two! We're having a baby! Really? Thank you, Catherine. Is it a boy or a girl? It seemed like we're expecting a girl. I couldn't wait to hold my own child in my arms. Let's do our best together. I'm going to be a new mom again. I talked to my unborn child every day. Everything was going smoothly. I thought so, and never doubted it. Or so I thought, until my father-in-law, who had been seriously ill, passed away, and my mother-in-law started acting out. About 2 months after his passing, mother-in-law began summoning me to her home more frequently. Our apartment is only a 15-minute drive from her place, but being called over almost every day was stressful. Don't worry about coming every day. My legs should get better soon. Of course, mother-in-law. Let's get started. At that time, mother-in-law had injured her leg and was using a cane, even indoors. As her daughter-in-law, it was my role to help with errands and other chores. I didn't mind the work itself. I'm not one to shy away from physical labor. The problem was the constant complaints about Tyler's ex-wife while I was working. She was a terrible wife, always timid and inefficient. She couldn't cook to save her life. Meat was always tough and the soup was too spicy. Even her cleaning was sloppy. She couldn't even use a mop properly, let alone wring out a cloth. Her laundry skills were also lacking. She wouldn't hand wash items that needed it. The complaints were incessant and malicious. I had never explicitly asked why Tyler and his ex-wife divorced, but I wouldn't have been surprised if mother-in-law had something to do with it. My suspicions would soon become a reality. It was around the time I'd reached my 9th month of pregnancy, and my belly had grown quite large. I got a call from mother-in-law. Would you like to have dinner together? Could you prepare my portion too? At that time, it wasn't uncommon for the 4 of us to share meals. But that evening, I got an urgent message from Tyler. I'll be home late tonight. Go ahead and have dinner without me. Mother-in-law was clearly displeased that she wouldn't get to see her grandson. What's with this meat? It's so tough to chew. Did you buy the cheap stuff? Well, we can't always afford the best. And this soup tastes like water, worse than hospital food. I tried to keep the salt low. The atmosphere at the dinner table was terrible, thanks to mother-in-law's constant complaints. Lauren seemed quieter than usual, as if he wanted to finish eating and leave. After dinner, while I was doing the dishes, mother-in-law started whispering something from behind me. The bigger your belly gets, the further Tyler and Lauren drift away from me. Mother-in-law, is something wrong? He used to rely on me a lot right after the divorce. I'm sorry, I can't hear you well over the water. Everyone's leaving me! Mother-in-law? You're in the way. You're not needed. I turned around to see mother-in-law raising a frying pan. Get lost, you worthless wife! What are you doing? Tyler's shout stopped mother-in-law in her tracks. Stop it, Mom! What are you trying to do to Catherine? Tyler had come home just in time. I was so shocked that my legs gave out, and I collapsed. Memories from the past few months flooded back into my mind. It started around my 6th month of pregnancy. Mother-in-law began visiting our home more frequently, making me constantly on edge. I never knew when she might drop by unannounced. I couldn't afford any slip-ups or oversights in my housework. Even my clothing couldn't be too casual. It was a series of restless days. Most of the conversations with mother-in-law revolved around my pregnancy. How's everything going? It's a girl, right? Is everything on track? So far, so good. I'm keeping a close eye on my weight. I was initially glad she seemed so concerned. At first, I honestly thought so. But as time went on, her behavior became increasingly unsettling. I had been strictly advised by my obstetrician to avoid excessive sugar intake. Too high of blood sugar levels could affect the baby. I thought I had communicated this to my mother-in-law repeatedly. Yet, she would say, "Here are some sweets I brought, and I got some fruit. It was on sale." It was hard to refuse when she offered them with a smile. And every time I did refuse, explaining why, she'd get clearly upset. As my belly grew, mother-in-law's interference intensified. "I can do the cleaning. You should relax, Catherine." Such offers seemed helpful at first, but when I looked around the room after she left, wait, where's our photo from last year's trip? The whole frame is gone. Important items would go missing, and quite frequently. "Oh, sorry, Catherine. I broke another plate." "It's okay, mother-in-law. Are you hurt?" "I'll clean it up." Dishes and glasses would get broken. My distrust of mother-in-law grew stronger and more irrepressible. Naturally, I talked to Tyler about it. "Do you think she doesn't like me deep down? I feel some hostility from her." "I'll subtly check it out. Sorry you have to go through this." Thanks to Tyler, who was always on my side, I managed to get by. Around my 7th month of pregnancy, my belly had grown significantly, and the strain on my back was increasing. Despite this, mother-in-law started summoning me to her house frequently again. She'd make me do chores, citing her aching legs or bad stomach as reasons. Sometimes she'd even say she was going out with friends and needed me to handle the housework. If I tried to resist, saying I was also struggling, she'd get furious. "Pregnancy isn't an illness. How cold-hearted. What a disappointment." Doing the chores, even if they were tough, was better than facing her wrath. While I was enduring and doing the housework, she'd say, "Why the sour face? I'm making you exercise for your own good." She claimed that lying around all day was bad for both the baby and me. I understood her point, but I wanted to do things at my own pace. Unable to argue or show my feelings, I went through truly difficult days. If chores extended into lunchtime, I'd eat at mother-in-law's house. Sometimes she'd prepare lunch for me. But when she did, "Here you go. It's just store-bought, but it's not bad." The food she served was clearly spoiled. If I didn't eat it or pointed out it was rotten, she'd scold me. "If you don't like it, don't eat it. After I went through all of the trouble of preparing it." She frowns and taunts me. No amount of apologizing would make her forgive me. During these tough times, Lauren was my emotional and physical support. "I can do the mopping for you. Bending over must be hard, right?" "Thank you, Lauren. You're a lifesaver." Lauren was a perceptive and smart kid, always helping me out. The only one who wasn't fun was mother-in-law. She always tried to win her grandson over. "How about some candy?" "Never mind, Catherine." She tried to lure Lauren with juice or an interesting cartoon. But Lauren would say, "I'm good, don't worry about it." Then she'd say something cold. The colder she was to me, the more she was disliked by her grandson. Of course, Tyler was always on my side. Whenever he had a day off, he'd visit mother-in-law's house and scold her multiple times. "Stop making Catherine do all the work and feeding her spoiled food." "I've never done such a thing. Tyler, you're being deceived." "What would Catherine gain from deceiving me? You're really losing it, Mom." "Are you saying I have dementia or what?" And so the relationship between mother-in-law and us deteriorated day by day. Around my 8th month of pregnancy, when I was mentally and physically drained, a stranger approached me while I was shopping. "Excuse me, you're Tyler's wife, right?" "I'm actually his ex-wife." Unexpectedly, I was approached by Tyler's ex-wife. She said she had something to talk about, so we went to a nearby cafe. Just like mother-in-law had described, Sophia was a quiet and reserved person. But what she told me was unbelievable, completely opposite to her demeanor. "She tried to take my life." "What?" She tried to kill you? By she, I mean mother-in-law, of course, Sophia said. She told me that she had faced various forms of harassment from mother-in-law while pregnant with Lauren. Being fed spoiled food, forced to do endless chores, and scolded if she resisted. It was a miracle that Lauren was born healthy in such a toxic environment. The harassment continued even after giving birth. I was treated like an intruder. Mother-in-law took Lauren away from Sophia and kept piling on the chores. Then one day, I felt a strong impact on my head and collapsed. A pot that was stored up high had fallen. That's what mother-in-law told the authorities. But I couldn't believe that was all there was to it. Sophia suspected mother-in-law had done something to her. Tyler couldn't change the situation. So Sophia, sensing danger, chose to divorce him. She left Lauren with Tyler due to her financial instability. Sophia repeatedly warned me to be cautious around mother-in-law. Please be careful. Take whatever precautions you can. Thank you for your concern. I'll do my best. When I told her how wonderfully Lauren had grown up, Sophia cried tears of joy. For her sake, too, I had to protect my family's well-being. I decided to take all necessary precautions. About a month later, that dreadful dinner happened. Tyler took the frying pan away from mother-in-law, who shook her head, saying, I didn't do anything. I was just putting the pan away. That's when Lauren, hiding behind Tyler, glared at mother-in-law. She's lying. I saw it. Grandma's lying. I agree. It looked like you were trying to hit Catherine. No, you're mistaken. Shall we check then? Check? What do you mean? I operated my phone and launched a special app. What? This room is on camera? I had cameras installed in the living room and kitchen. It was a precaution I took after Sophia's warning. When I played back the footage, there was mother-in-law trying to hit me with the frying pan. Mom, explain yourself. Cornered, mother-in-law was now almost in tears. I was just jealous that you were taken away from me. Her reasoning was utterly selfish. She had hoped to live with Tyler again after his divorce, but was disappointed when he remarried so quickly. She felt robbed of the chance to have her son and grandson all to herself. Mother-in-law kept repeating these selfish claims. How dare you come into our lives and steal everything? Both Lauren and I felt disgusted by her words. Tyler's face turned red with anger. How could you say that to my mom? Apologize. Apologize now. That day, after a heated argument, mother-in-law was kicked out of our house. Later, Tyler declared he would sever all ties with his mother. I will never see Mom again, no matter what, and no financial support either. Wait, please, I'm sorry. I've learned my lesson. It was no surprise that Tyler was furious. Part of his anger stemmed from the fact that I had told him everything Sophia had shared with me. Until then, Tyler had never thought his mother could harm Sophia. Realizing he had been wrong all along, he was visibly frustrated. Don't ever show your face to us again. Got it? With that final word, mother-in-law left, tears in her eyes. A few weeks later, I gave birth to a baby girl without any stress. Life has been peaceful, and we're enjoying our time with the newborn. As for mother-in-law, she seems to be struggling financially since losing her son's support. She's working part-time, but is reportedly having a hard time dealing with harassment from a younger manager. I heard this directly from mother-in-law when she called to ask for financial help. Life is so hard for me right now. I'm barely getting by. I understand, but we have our own expenses with raising a child. Please, can't you help? Even $200 a month, or $100 if that's too much. I'm sorry. I have to hang up now. Please don't call us again. Ignoring her pleas to wait, I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. After that, mother-in-law apparently took on more work. She's working mornings at a fast food restaurant and afternoons stocking shelves and working the cash register at a supermarket. I heard this from Sophia. When we met up recently, after a long time, I saw her at the supermarket by chance, and she looked so thin, like a different person, like a zombie. She didn't even notice Sophia standing right in front of her. If only mother-in-law had been kind, things wouldn't have come to this. It's a pitiful situation, but she brought it upon herself. I hope she reflects on her actions and finds a way to make it through life.
My name is Rachel. I live with my husband Samuel, our daughter Sarah, and my mother-in-law Lily. Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts are not uncommon, and our household is no exception. Ever since I got married, Lily has been throwing shade my way. Be better at housework, your cooking is lazy, have kids already, just to name a few. Samuel always defends me though. However, Lily absolutely adores our long-awaited daughter Sarah. Sarah is equally fond of her grandma, making me realize that even the most critical people have a soft spot for their grandchildren. But with that affection came unwanted opinions on how we raised Sarah. I first noticed something was off when Sarah was 2.5 years old. I started to feel anxious because she still wasn't speaking. Lily blamed me, saying it was my fault for letting the TV raise her. Upon Samuel's suggestion, we took Sarah to the hospital. The diagnosis was a developmental delay. Sarah had a disability. I was devastated, and Lily's words didn't help. How embarrassing that my grandchild has a disability. We can't even face society. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The same Lily who doted on Sarah now looked at her with cold eyes I had never seen before. There is no history of disability in our family. Rachel, are you sure Sarah is Samuel's child? She isn't the result of an affair, is she? Her harsh words shocked me. Well, you're not denying it. Could it be true? I can't believe you would say that, Lily.
Mom, stop it. There is no way Rachel would cheat. Sarah is our beloved daughter, disability or not. If you have a problem, you can leave.
Samuel's heated response made Lily backtrack. Oh, I was just joking. Sorry, Rachel. As she started giving candy to Sarah. Since then, mother-in-law has continued to adore Sarah without saying a word, but only when Samuel is around. But the moment he left, the snide comments began. Sarah is such a pitiful child. I wonder what will become of her in the future. You know, I heard a boy with a disability injured someone. It's scary, isn't it? That's why I worry. Please stop, especially in front of her. We're doing everything we can to raise her well.
Oh, come on. She has a disability. She doesn't understand what we are saying.
She would just keep going.
A daughter-in-law who can only give birth to children with disabilities? Maybe that was a mistake. They say older mothers are more likely to have children like this. We should have gotten a younger daughter-in-law.
No matter how many times I asked her to stop, she wouldn't listen. I couldn't bring myself to tell Samuel, who genuinely believed his mother had changed for the better. My father-in-law has just passed away, and if mother-in-law gets kicked out, she has nowhere else to go. Besides, she does love Sarah in her own way. Taking away Sarah's beloved grandmother wasn't something I could easily do. It's not the time to be down. I have got to be strong for my daughter. That's what I would tell myself every time her words hurt me. Sarah is now 7 years old. She speaks slowly but surely. She's in special needs class in elementary school. Samuel and I warmly watch as Sarah grows at her own pace.
Mother-in-law still laments, why can't she be like other kids?
Then one day, I felt something strange in my body and suspected I might be pregnant. I went to the OBGYN and sure enough, I was expecting our second child. I happily shared the news with Samuel and mother-in-law.
Way to go, Sarah, you're gonna be a big sister.
Sarah also looked delighted. It was a moment of happiness.
But what if the next one also has a disability?
Mother-in-law said, looking concerned.
Raising 2 children with disabilities is tough. Maybe you should consider terminating the pregnancy.
Mom, what are you saying? We don't even know if the child will have a disability.
Oh, you're even older now than when you had Sarah. That means the chances are even higher. And let's face it, it runs in the family. The next one will surely have a disability too.
Mom, enough is enough. We are raising both kids, no matter what.
After my mother-in-law shrugged her shoulders and walked away, Samuel turned to me.
Hey, are you okay? If you can't stand this, Rachel, we can always separate, you know?
I'm fine. She adores Sarah in her own way. She'll come around with this child too. Little did I know I would later regret this decision. One day, I noticed my belly was starting to show. While playing with Sarah, the doorbell rang and the front door opened. Hey there, Rachel. How's it going? The face that appeared was Samuel's younger sister, Emily. She was holding a paper bag. Emily lives on her own and has always admired me. Emily has always been fond of me, subtly shielding me from mother-in-law's snide remarks. She's also great with Sarah. She's genuinely a bright and cheerful person. We often go shopping together. Mother-in-law seems to have a soft spot for Emily, her late-in-life child, so Emily's presence often keeps mother-in-law's passive aggressiveness at bay. Emily, long time no see.
Oh, Emily, you should have called before coming. Emily, let's play.
Emily smiled at the warm welcome from the three of us. I came because I have something I want to show you, Rachel. Saying this, we both went upstairs to my room. Ta-da! I found a dress that would look great on you, Rachel. Emily took a stylish dress out of the bag. It's a nice gesture, but I'm pregnant. I wonder if it would suit me. Noticing my hesitation, Emily spoke up. Why don't you try it on? When I did, I found that the dress not only fit well, but also did accentuate my baby bump. Wow, I didn't know something like this existed. Thank you. You're welcome. Actually, I bought another one just like it. I wanted us to match. Emily then took out another dress identical to the one she gave me. Sarah, seeing this, ran excitedly to my mother-in-law.
Grandma, Mom is wearing a blue dress. What are you doing, Grandma? Oh, how nice for you.
Just as Emily and I were enjoying our matching dresses, my mother-in-law called me. Rachel, we have guests. Come downstairs. Okay. As I was about to leave, Emily stopped me. It's fine. You need to take care of yourself. I'll go. Before I could reply, Emily left the room. Right after, a scream rang out and I rushed out in alarm. And then I found Emily lying at the bottom of the stairs. My mother-in-law was shouting,
Rachel! Oh my God, Rachel! Snap out of it!
I'm right here. What's going on? My mother-in-law glanced back and forth between me and Emily, clearly confused.
Wait, then who is this?
That's when she realized it wasn't me who had fallen, but Emily who was wearing the same blue dress. She turned pale.
Emily, hang in there. Oh, what do I do?
We quickly called an ambulance and Emily was taken away. I was praying hard for Emily's safety. Sarah was also crying. However, something didn't sit right with me. My mother-in-law had said we have guests, but there were no guests to be seen. I was growing suspicious of her crying. In light of my sister's emergency, even my husband rushed back from work. Luckily, Emily regained consciousness quickly and gave us her usual innocent smile from her hospital bed. However, she had broken her leg and wouldn't be walking for a while. Emily, are you okay? I'm sorry if I had been there. It's not your fault, Rachel. I'm the clumsy one. I felt like something tripped me, even though there was nothing there. I didn't miss how my mother-in-law was visibly shaken by those words. Is it the string? Sarah said, revealing something in her hand.
Granny had strung this across the top of the stairs.
This is piano wire. What's going on, mother-in-law? Stringing piano wire across the stairs could only be seen as malicious.
Don't make absurd accusations, you disabled person.
Mom, Sarah may be disabled, but she doesn't lie. What's this piano wire about?
Mom, what's going on? Were you actually trying to harm your own daughter?
Even Samuel, my husband, turned against mother-in-law.
No, I never meant for Emily to get hurt.
So, you meant for Rachel to get hurt, didn't you? You said we had guests and called Rachel out. That's right, and there were actually no guests. My mother-in-law had nothing to say.
Mom, were you trying to kill Rachel and the child she's carrying? Your own grandchild? Why would you do something so horrible, Mom?
Enough! I don't need a daughter-in-law who gives birth to disabled children.
The room went ice cold at her words. My mother-in-law continued without pause.
Sarah turned out that way, so the next one will surely be disabled too. It's better for both mother and child to be gone now so they won't have to suffer later.
Mom, are you serious?
Of course I am. Sarah can't even read at her age, unlike other kids. She's a failure.
At his mother's harsh words, Samuel raised his voice.
Mom, how could you say that?
People with disabilities only lead lives of struggles. They're a burden. They have no reason to live. The woman who gives birth to a child with disabilities is no better. She's ruining your life, Samuel.
Mom, you used to dote on Sarah.
I feel sorry for her as my grandchild, but that was a mistake. To think she would tattle? I thought she couldn't understand anything because she has a disability.
Mother-in-law glares bitterly at Sarah. That's why she could set a trap in front of Sarah. I shuddered at the thought that they underestimated Sarah because she has a disability. Maybe if they succeeded, they were planning to go after Sarah next? It's a chilling thought.
Mom, do you understand what you tried to do is murder?
It was for you, my dear son. I did want to see you struggle because of a child with a disability. Why didn't you divorce this woman with flawed genes and find a younger one?
At his mother's audacity, Samuel shoots her an icy look unlike any she's ever seen before.
Mom, there's something I never told you. Remember how I was bullied a lot as a child?
Oh yes, you often came crying to me.
As an adult, I struggled with relationships and sought medical help. That's when I learned that I have a developmental disability.
Samuel shows her a card certifying his disability.
You are...
Yeah, if this disability is hereditary, the cause isn't Rachel, it's me.
Why didn't you tell me?
How could I tell a woman who would even think of killing her own grandchild just because they might have a disability?
The mother-in-law is at a loss for words.
I would never kill you.
Who knows? But I should have told you earlier, then maybe you wouldn't have tried to harm Rachel. I'm truly sorry, Rachel and Sarah.
Samuel apologized to us.
When I was shocked to learn I have a disability, it was Rachel who stood by me.
That's right. I fell for Samuel, a gentle, if quirky man, and told him, disability or not, I love you for who you are.
Right now, I'm thriving at work and even leading big projects.
Some people with disabilities, including those with savant syndrome, show exceptional talents. Samuel is one of them, using his talents in his work.
Life ruined? That's nonsense. I'm happy. Are you saying that people with disabilities don't deserve to live? That woman who gave birth to them are at fault too? That hits pretty close to home for me and my mom.
I didn't know. This is different.
Mom, I'm the same. I can't walk now, so that makes me disabled too? You're the one who put me in this situation.
Please forgive me, Emily. You weren't the target.
Even the ever-smiling Emily glares at my mother-in-law. You have got to be kidding. That's the least forgivable thing. I can't forgive a woman who insulted her adorable niece and almost killed Rachel and her unborn child.
Same here. I'm cutting ties with you, Mom. After trying to kill my wife and child and making Emily go through this, unforgivable. Please leave now.
The coldness in Samuel's voice sent shivers down his mother's spine.
Please forgive me. I won't do it again. I have nowhere else to go.
Then your only option is prison.
Prison?
Of course, what you have done is attempted murder. But whether to press charges is up to Rachel.
Just as the decision fell on me, my mother-in-law began to apologize profusely.
Rachel, I am sorry. Please, not the police.
I was torn. What she did is unforgivable, but she's also Samuel and Emily's mother. Above all, I didn't want Sarah and our unborn child to have a criminal for a grandmother. I won't report you to the police,
Rachel.
But I will sue you for damages. And you're leaving, never to see Sarah or our upcoming child again.
How will I live?
Looking around at the unsupportive faces, her eyes finally land on Sarah.
Sarah will miss her grandma, won't she? I have doted on her so much.
Mom, stop it.
I couldn't believe my ears. The same woman who insulted Sarah for her disability was now clinging to her for help? So they still think Sarah doesn't understand anything because she has a disability? When I look at Sarah, she is giving mother-in-law the same cold stare that Samuel and I are. Grandma, you don't like me, do you?
No, that's not true. Grandma loves you, Sarah. That's a lie. You said I'm a burden and trash. Sarah spoke slowly but clearly. She understood exactly what her grandma had said. I don't like you, Grandma, for picking on Mom, the baby, and Emily. So goodbye. You insolent brat, despite your disability? Samuel grabbed the hand mother-in-law had raised against Sarah and twisted it.
Enough is enough.
Ouch! Let go.
Hurt? Emily suffered more. If Rachel had fallen for your trap, she would have suffered even more.
Help! Ache!
Mother-in-law screamed as Emily watched her with icy eyes. Mom, you're not remorseful at all. You won't have anyone to take care of you in the future.
What?
Mother-in-law broke down. We forcibly made her stand and kicked her out of the hospital room and, of course, out of our lives as well. Afterwards, Emily and I successfully sued mother-in-law in civil court and won a significant settlement. I also gave birth safely a healthy baby boy. Sarah loves her baby brother and plays with him every day. Emily, who has recovered from her broken bones, had a shotgun wedding with a coworker one day. They often come to visit with their newborn, showering our children with love. Mother-in-law, unable to even see her grandchild's face, lives alone in a cheap apartment dealing with the shock. She is also in debt due to the settlement and seems to be struggling in life. Everyone becomes a disabled person in some way as they age, but no one will be there to help mother-in-law. Of course, we have no intention of helping her. We hope she lives a life full of regret. We're not yet sure if our son has a disability. He might be like Sarah, and we'll know early on, or like Samuel, and we won't know until he's older. But whether our children have disabilities or not, they are our precious ones. We have decided to nurture them lovingly.
We don't need you anymore. Strangers should just express their condolences and leave. With no regard for the onlookers, my mother-in-law yelled. Today is the funeral of my recently deceased father-in-law. This woman, who typically tormented me, took this opportunity to let loose on me more than ever. How can she treat anyone like this with no hesitation? I was the one taking care of my father-in-law. As I struggled to contain my annoyance with my father-in-law, my husband, who was nearby, opens his mouth. You're right. Strangers are just a nuisance. With that, he steps in front of his mother. My name is Michelle Shore, 30 years old. I married my husband 2 years ago and currently live with him and his parents. My husband's name is Mike, also 30. We initially lived in an apartment, just the two of us, after getting married. However, it seemed my husband was an only child and had been quite adored by his mother. The calls from his mother were frequent, sometimes several times a day, even after our marriage. Mike, when will you come to live with me? I don't mind if it's just you. Please come back. I'm lonely. You know, the greatest form of giving back to your parents is to just be with them. She would constantly beg for us to live with her like this. My husband didn't take it seriously and certainly had no intention of moving in with her. But one day, his father came to see us. Mike, Michelle, could you consider living with us? At this unexpected proposal, Mike asked with a troubled face, What's this all about, Dad? You and Mom, you're both healthy. There's no need for us to live together, is there? We are physically well, but it's still rough at times for me, mentally. I may have reached my limit living alone with your mother. What do you mean, Dad? Well, after hearing the full story from his father, it seemed that ever since Mike had moved out, his mother's behavior had been progressively getting worse. She would verbally abuse his father and withdraw money from the bank without even asking. When they checked the balance of the bank account they had been saving for their retirement, after a few months, it appeared that she had spent as much as $10,000 without even asking. When confronted, his mother readily confessed, but showed no remorse. What's worse, she had no intention of returning the money, and started complaining that the house has become uncomfortable since Mike left. Having reached his limits, his father made her swear on a written agreement that if she committed any more misdeeds, he would divorce her. Since then, there had been no abusive words or unauthorized spending, But the relationship between the two had not improved, and a cold war continued in their home. That's why his father was asking us to live with them, even for a short while, to ease the tension in their house. That night, my husband and I decided to discuss living with them. He seemed to think that I would be against it, and began by saying, "I understand Dad's feelings, but Michelle, you'd be troubled if we suddenly had to live with them, wouldn't you?" But it's true that your father is having a hard time, right? If there's something we can do, we should do it, shouldn't we? But wouldn't that be hard on you? I'll be fine. Besides, your father is the one who will suffer if we don't do something. We have to help him as soon as possible. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Michelle. I'll talk to Dad about moving in with them. And thus, we as a couple decided to move in with my in-laws. My husband and my father-in-law came to an agreement, and our new life started immediately the next month. My husband Mike always noticed my changes, and was someone I could rely on when things got tough. My father-in-law, too, had a good relationship with us ever since our first meeting during our engagement. However, the one thing that concerned me was my mother-in-law. As I mentioned earlier, she doted on her son Mike, incredibly. When we went to meet them for our engagement, she only talked to Mike and completely ignored me. Even after we got married and visited their house a few times, she only talked to Mike. When she did talk to me, it was the bare minimum, and she made it very clear that she didn't enjoy our conversations. It wasn't that I had a bad relationship with her, I just personally found her difficult. However, since moving in, she was always happy because she got to live with Mike. So we didn't have any major issues, even though she never really talked to me. One day, after about a year of living together, an incident broke out, and it turned our life upside down. I got a phone call while I was at my part-time job. It was from Mike, who should have been at work too. "Michelle, listen carefully," he said. "It seems that Dad has collapsed and been taken to the hospital by an ambulance." "What? Dad?" I replied. "I'm leaving work now and heading to the hospital. What about you, Michelle?" "Of course, I'm coming too. I'll talk to my manager right now." "Okay, let me know when you get to the hospital." I hurried to the hospital and met up with Mike. When we got to my father-in-law's room, he was lying in bed, but turned to us and spoke. "Sorry for making you worry," he said with a smile, which gave us a bit of relief. But then I noticed something odd. I looked around and timidly asked him, Dad? Where is Mom?" "Oh, her. She's at home." "Home? Why?" "I collapsed at home. She didn't even bother to call an ambulance. I had to call them myself." "So, she didn't even ride with you in the ambulance?" "That's right. But don't worry about it." "Oh, Dad." The shocking revelation left us speechless. Not only me, but Mike too was turning red with rage. Thankfully, my father-in-law recovered and was able to be discharged after a few days. However, he was diagnosed with advanced cancer, and the collapse had left him with severe paralysis throughout his body, leaving him unable to live alone. The doctor informed us that he needed full-time care, and we were at a loss for words. When Mike relayed this to his mother, she let out a heavy sigh. She acted as if she was being inconvenienced, but Mike and I managed to persuade her, and we all decided to work together to take care of my father-in-law. Mike made a good earning, so I quit my part-time job to dedicate myself to caregiving and house chores. Ever since then, my life centered around caregiving. While it was challenging to adjust to something new, my father-in-law always wore a smile and thanked me, saying, "Thank you." When Mike got home from work, he would take over the caregiving responsibilities. This allowed me to finish preparing dinner and take a bath while enjoying a brief period of freedom. We were living each day in this cycle, making it possible for me to continue providing care without overburdening myself. That being said, it wasn't all smooth sailing. When Mike left for work, my mother-in-law wouldn't lift a finger to help. Moreover, she would become irritated when I was busy caring for my father-in-law and couldn't handle all the housework. One day, unable to bear the situation any longer, I confronted her directly. Mother-in-law, could you maybe help out a bit more? I asked. What? Why all of a sudden? You're so full of yourself. She responded. If you don't want to take care of my father-in-law, I'll do it. Could you at least help out a little with the household chores in return? Shut up! You're only our daughter-in-law. The housework is your job. And of course, so is taking care of him. Wait a minute. We've talked about doing our best to help each other out. You decided that on your own, didn't you? Don't drag me into that. I just wish he would die already. I need the inheritance money. Hold on. How could you say such a thing? Your husband is still... Enough! You're a stranger to begin with. The conversation ended with my mother-in-law calling me disrespectful and leaving. I asked her for help a few more times, but to no avail. I also talked to Mike about it, and he tried to talk to her, but she would always play the victim, making it impossible to have a meaningful discussion. To make matters worse, Mike had to transfer. Upon hearing the news, my mother-in-law gleefully suggested, let's put him in a nursing home. But nursing homes are expensive, and she's not working. Given that my father-in-law is physically disabled but still mentally well, is there really a need to put him in a home? After thinking it over many times, I decided to stay behind and continue taking care of my father-in-law. Initially, my mother-in-law made her displeasure quite obvious, but I didn't let that get to me. Despite Mike's concerns, I stood firm in my decision. However, what I didn't realize was how this choice would bring me so much distress. A few months had passed since Mike had started his new assignment elsewhere. On this day, I was going to meet a close friend who lived far away, but was visiting town. I had previously informed my in-laws about this and had arranged for my mother-in-law to take care of my father-in-law for the day. However, just as I was getting ready to leave, my mother-in-law came into my room without knocking and said, Michelle, I'm going shopping with a friend right now. Could you please take care of the house and him? Wait, what? I thought I made it clear that you were supposed to take care of my father-in-law today, since I'm meeting up with my friend. Oh, is it? I don't remember. That's so unfair. I've told you days before. You're so annoying. I don't know anything about this. Just be grateful that I'm letting you live here, rent-free. But I was really looking forward to meeting my friend after so long. Even a fool like you has a best friend, huh? Birds of a feather flock together. Don't worry, you'll meet them again soon enough. Well, good luck. My mother-in-law hastily left through the door. I broke down crying. Why? Why is it always me? I do the housework and take care of Mike's father every day. Isn't it okay to go out for just one day? This is too much. Just because you hate me. This is too much. A mix of unplaced anger and emptiness overwhelmed me, making it hard to recover. But now that my mother-in-law was out, I had things to do. I wiped away my tears, texted my best friend about what had happened, and got back to the household chores. I prepared the meal for the elderly care and headed towards Mike's father's room. When I knocked and entered the room, Mike's father called out with a serious look. Michelle, my father-in-law, what's the matter? I'm sorry. Because of my wife. Your plans got ruined. Huh? Did you hear that earlier? My father-in-law slowly nodded. Then he pulled something out of the drawer next to his bed and handed it to me. My father-in-law, this is... Could you do me a favor in my stead? But, are you sure? Yes, I am. It's something I've decided a little while ago. Saying that, he pulled out a voice recorder from under his pillow. When the play button was pressed, an unbelievable voice came out. After hearing everything, I promised to fulfill my father-in-law's wish and went to this one place on a later date. But that was the last thing I was able to do for my father-in-law. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law's condition suddenly worsened in the middle of the night. Even though he was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, it was too late, and he passed away. My husband, who hurried back from out of state, was not able to be there at the end. Father-in-law, what's the matter? My mother-in-law, who always claimed it was too much of a hassle, left all the arrangements for the wake and funeral to my husband. We held a simple wake, just with our close family members, and then the day of the funeral arrived. My father-in-law had started his own company when he was alive and continued to work until the day he collapsed, so he had an extensive network. A large number of people attended the funeral, all showing tears for my father-in-law's death. I exchanged greetings with my father-in-law's acquaintances and waited for the funeral to start. Then my father-in-law, who had been sitting on a chair at the edge, approached me with determination. "Michelle, how long do you plan on staying here?" "Huh?" "Not huh? Now that his care is done, there's no need for you to be here anymore." "Wait, mother-in-law, what are you saying?" "We don't need you anymore. Strangers should just send their condolences and leave." Without caring about the surrounding eyes, my mother-in-law spit out these words as if making fun of me. At her loud voice, the surrounding people started to murmur. My mother-in-law reached out her hand to me and smirked. "Leave your condolence gift and go." At that moment, I felt my blood rush to my head. Who does she think she is? Just leave your condolence gift? We don't need you? This is no joke. How much do you need to insult me to be satisfied? I stepped closer, about to give my mother-in-law a piece of my mind, but the person standing in my way was none other than my husband, Mike. Slowly, with a hard stare at his mother, he began to speak. "That's right, Mom. Strangers are a nuisance." "My dear son, you think the same, right, Mike?" "Yeah, I do. So, could you please leave, Mom? You're not my mother anymore. Just take your stuff and go." "What? Mike, what are you—" Desperately clinging to her son, my mother-in-law's face tightens into a forced smile. Her voice trembles, her disturbance clearly visible. Mike turns to me, trying to convey something. Understanding his intention, I explain the situation to my mother-in-law. "Mother-in-law? No! Margaret, please, leave immediately." What did you just say? In your position as a daughter-in-law? I'm no longer your daughter-in-law. I'm a complete stranger. What are you talking about? You're not planning to steal that man's inheritance, are you? You've conspired with him and Mike to do this. No way! All of that man's inheritance is mine! No, it's not anything like that. After all, you're not getting a single penny of the inheritance. With the facts laid out clearly, my mother-in-law stares at me, wide-eyed. For some reason, she grabs my collar and raises her voice. "Don't mess with me! Always saying whatever you want. I don't want you deciding the distribution of that man's inheritance. It's your husband's will." "Oh, really? And? I don't care about his will. As his wife, I'm guaranteed a share of the inheritance." "You won't get it. After all, you're divorced from my father-in-law." "What?" "Yes, my mother-in-law is already divorced from my father-in-law, and I was the one who submitted the divorce papers. That day, my father-in-law showed me his divorce papers. Previously, he had made a pact saying, 'The next time you commit a misdeed, we'll get a divorce.' Out of precaution, he had apparently made my mother-in-law sign the divorce papers. She continued to torment me, even ruining my plans with my best friend. When my father-in-law found out, he was as furious as if it had happened to him. On top of that, she secretly entered my father-in-law's room to steal money, showering him with horrible words like, 'Die already! Just pass on and leave the inheritance,' etc. These cruel words were recorded by a voice recorder that my father-in-law had hidden by his bedside. Once I finished explaining all of this, the color drained from my mother-in-law's face. In front of her, Mike presented the divorce certification. To my mother-in-law, who was left speechless, I said one last cold sentence. "Do you understand? You were long since abandoned by my father-in-law. It's just horrible that you trampled over the feelings of such a kind man. What? Wait a minute! Without his inheritance, how will I live? You've got to be kidding. Someone as lowly as you have no right to inherit the legacy left by my father-in-law. You should be thankful you've been able to live freely until now. From now on, you'll live a lonely life on a meager social security check. I'll never help you. I hope you suffer more than my father-in-law did when he was sick, and struggled to survive. With these words, my former mother-in-law left, crying. The funeral commenced shortly after, but she never returned. After the funeral, I returned home, but she was nowhere to be found. I packed my belongings and moved to my husband's place. Since we deleted my former mother-in-law's number, we have no idea what kind of life she's living now. Even if she were in trouble, we would not help her. Of course, we have no intention of seeing her either. After the move, Mike and I bought a small Christian shrine and decided to place a picture of his father. I started looking for part-time work nearby, and we returned to our dual income lifestyle. It's busy, but quite fulfilling. Bye, Dad. I'm off now, Mike said. I'm leaving too, father-in-law, I also said, and left. Every morning, we do this, paying respects to the picture of Mike's father before we head to work. It seems like the man in the photo is smiling back at us.